In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how to color correct redness, acne, and under eye circles. So I don't currently have any kind of makeup on right now. I already did all of my skincare and all of my skin prep, but you can see from what I have going on, I definitely have some acne that could definitely be covered up, and then I also have my under eye circles. I thought that this would be a good opportunity to kind of take advantage of what's already going on in my face and to just kind of show you all how to cover it up. So as far as color correcting these types of things go, a lot of times you're told, like, very generally the colors that you should use. So basically when you are color correcting, you are basically using the colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So these are also referred to as complementary colors. You're going to see a lot of concealers out there that look like this, right? Where it's like the extreme of these colors. So normally, like for my acne, for redness, a lot of people just try to tell you, oh, use green on that, perfect, it'll go away. And then for under eye circles, you see a lot of people using like bright orange and red, and you'll see red lipstick. And while all of those things work, and they do technically fall into line with the rules for color correcting, you have to realize that not every single person is going to be able to take those kinds of colors on their skin. So I myself, I'm extremely pale. So if I put green on my skin, ultimately I'm kind of just turning myself green, and then I have to go back and color correct that. So as far as color correcting goes, I like to have things like this on hand, but then I like to kind of customize it to either my skin tone or whoever's skin tone I'm working on. So it's always really important, especially if you are going to be working on multiple people, or even if you're just working on yourself. If you know, like, I have trouble with under eye circles, or like I have trouble with acne, if you find these like base colors, you can mix yourself a perfect color if you have your own foundation. They do also sell just like premixed colors that are closer to skin tone, but you don't necessarily have to use these extremes. That is one thing that I think a lot of people get really confused about, and then I think that they don't necessarily like understand color correcting, and they feel like it doesn't work because they just end up turning themselves green, or you turn yourself orange. But you just have to make sure that you are using the appropriate color for you specifically. So just to kind of show you an example of that before I really get into it. So we'll say if I wanted to, so I just have like kind of general redness like everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead. So this is like that green concealer. So if I put this on, like, oh great, like, you know, I'm getting rid of some of my redness, but it is definitely making me a little bit green, and it's definitely harder to tell in a video than it would be in real life. But instead of using something like this, that's like, so if we go ahead and like really swatch it on there, so instead of using something that is like a pure green like that, me personally, I like to go in with more of like a skin tone green. So these colors that I'm using right now, these are Dermacolor by Krylon. These are some of like the best concealers and most pigmented concealers that you can get that are out there on the market. They're not super expensive either, so I really do recommend these if you're looking into corrective makeup for yourself or for your kit. So instead of using this like very, very green color, what I usually do is I use a color that's just a little bit closer to my skin tone, and then I like to blend that in. So you can see, so again, it's a little tricky because you are in camera, but you can kind of see this one has just like a hint more of like an actual skin tone color to it, whereas this one is more of like a minty green. So even for people that have like really extreme redness, like if you have like rosacea, or if you're covering like a very red tattoo or something, I still find that I try to get away with using a skin tone, just because that way it just wants to blend into your skin a little bit more than using the extreme of that color. So now at this point I need to go ahead and blend this in. So you can take, so I'm just going to use my little like blending brush and really quickly kind of blend this away, just to kind of show you how the two kind of blend. So you can kind of see, and I think it's a little easier now that I've blended it in. This side definitely blends in a little bit better with like my natural skin tone, whereas this, it still kind of has like a green cast to it. And again, it is very tricky because I'm on camera and I am very pale, so it's hard to see these kinds of things. But this kind of a color, like I often, like I can wear this on its own, whereas like something like that, I would definitely have to put foundation over it. So a lot of times when you are using these really extreme color correctors, you can't just like put it on your face and go. You have to put something else over it to kind of like re-neutralize what you're already doing. The reason that we're even using these extremes of colors, just in case you are not my student and you haven't been in my color theory class, when you put complementary colors over each other. So if I put green over red, they neutralize each other. So if you were to like mix these colors in like real life, they actually kind of turn into like a gray. So by putting them on top of each other, you neutralize them. And anytime you're trying to color correct something on your face, you're trying to neutralize it. So that's kind of an example of like what I do to get rid of my like natural redness, or like any kind of natural redness. So if you have like something specific right here, like I have this giant pimple right here, so I could go in with that green and cover that up, but I find again I have my own kind of like skin tone kind of green, and so when I'm working with like a general redness like that, I'll kind of like cover my whole face with something like this, so it's sort of like a veil. But if it's something really specific like acne, I have found that if you really have a bad pimple, you need to put the color corrector there, and then I actually powder over it before I put any kind of foundation or anything over it, just because a lot of times things that are more textured like that, the makeup doesn't like to stay on them, and acne is also pretty oily, so kind of putting that color corrector and then putting that powder over it just kind of like seals it in. And sometimes I'll use like an even smaller brush when I do that, and when you're doing it, you don't want to like wipe it on, you really want to press it, because when you're pressing it on, that really gives you a lot more coverage than if you're just like wiping it, because if you're just wiping it like this, you're just pulling it across your face, whereas if I'm patting it on, I'm really getting the coverage where I want it to go. So for something like this, you don't necessarily want to blend it out all the way. I have a lot of redness, so it wouldn't necessarily be the worst if I did that, but if you're really just trying to cover like one little acne spot, I really just try to like leave that actual spot of acne alone, and then I just put the concealer right on top of that. And so you can kind of see starting to go away a little bit. So then at this point, I would take a little bit of my powder, and then I would be able to put my foundation over that. So I have like a foundation powder, but you could use translucent powder, pretty much anything. You just really want to like kind of press it on there. So you don't want to use a ton, because if you put too much powder on, you're not going to be able to blend things over it. But I find if you do just enough to kind of like lock it in, that is a lot less likely to move around when you start putting foundation and everything over it. Because at this point, when I have it that concentrated, I really do just look like I have like a giant green blob on my face. So at this point then, I would want to come in with my normal foundation color, and then I could just kind of like put that right over it. And again, this is all my own makeup, so I'm able to like use it all directly, but if you're working on someone else, you would definitely want to be kind of scooping it out differently. So I'm going to avoid my under eyes for right now, just because I'm going to do another little thing on that, but just to kind of show you how we can cover this up. And this works for acne, and really if there's like anything small that you're trying to cover up and it has texture, I really find that if you put just like a little bit of powder over it, that definitely helps it kind of stay on a little bit more easily than if you just kind of like cake concealer and then cake your foundation, because sometimes I feel like the oils in the foundation just kind of like remove it and pull it back off. And so at this point, again, I don't really have that much foundation on, so it looks a little bit odd, but you could just finish. So like, I'll just like really quickly kind of throw the rest of it on, just to give you an idea of what it could look like. And again, I'm just going to avoid my under eyes. And again, when you're blending, in case you aren't one of my students who's watching this and you haven't seen me do this before, you just do kind of like little circles and you kind of pat it into your skin, and that's how you can blend it out. Again, you want to be really careful when you go back over that area, but it's kind of like a really quick, probably worst foundation I've ever put on before, but just to kind of give you an example, and then you say like, okay, great, I'm done. You can kind of take your powder, and then we're going to powder that down to set it, so that way I can make sure that it stays on. So you can kind of see now much better than where we started, and especially if you like compare it to how red my nose is or how red some of my other acne is, that's how it definitely looks a lot better. So obviously if I only have on like one color, it's going to look a little weird because I don't have any of my like shading and blush and everything like that and highlight, but you can see it's not super complicated. As long as you have something that's pigmented and it's got like a little bit of green to it, it would cover redness. And then I think in the next video, we're going to talk about under eye circles, so that this one doesn't get a little bit too long, but hopefully that helps you kind of understand how you can quickly cover something that you don't want anyone to see on your face, right? So it can be, again, you want to find something, if it's like redness and it's acne, you would want to find something that's either a little bit green, or even sometimes I feel like yellow works really well for those kinds of things too. So I think like the most important thing to remember with color correction is that you don't have to take the extreme of the colors. You can find the best color for you and it will still work out great. So I didn't use like pure green on this, but I found a green that works a little bit better on my skin tone, and it still covers it really nicely and blends in with me. So hopefully that makes color correcting make a little bit more sense, and then we are going to move on to under eye circles next.